Claire. Thank you so much for being with me today.
Hi, Kim. Thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to be here.
So I want to first, we were talking on Instagram and just talking before this that this topic is really personal and important to me. And it is about like traveling with a child with autism or higher support needs, and also traveling with neurotypical children or one child and how to balance it. So before we get into that, I'm hoping that you can just first give a quick intro and let everyone know like what you're working on now, how you got into this area of focus, and all the good stuff.
Absolutely. So I'm Claire Powers. I am a pediatric speech therapist and autism parent coach, and I primarily work with mothers of autistic and neurodivergent children, helping them prioritize their self-care and making sure their needs are met so they can show up as their child's best teacher at home and help them become the confident communicator that they were born to be. And so I truly feel that parents, and especially mothers of autistic and neurodivergent children, have such power. And a lot of the times I feel like you guys don't even understand how much power you have and how special you are. And so that's what lights me up. And that's what, keeps me going, keeps me wanting to do this work because I'm on a mission to help moms like you understand that you have the power, you are capable, and you can make positive changes in your family. And this is a perfect example, going on trips. We love going on trips. We love, having family involved in whatever we're doing. And, sometimes you need a bit of a strategic plan when you're navigating, like you said, Kim, neurotypical kids, neurodivergent
Mhm.
kids. There's a lot of needs. There's a lot of cooks in the kitchen. And so kind of going over that streamlined process and helping parents do that, that's what I do. And I love it.
Well, thank you so much for the work that you're doing. And also for this community, I think that we're all building on Instagram. Like we have like connected with so many other parents and providers. And I think like what you're saying in terms of power, it's also there's so much support, you know? And I know everyone kind of comes to this with like a little bit of a different perspective and every child is different, but there is this common thread of that we are trying to support and advocate for our kids and what that looks like.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And then for me with the self-care, you can't be an advocate unless you are feeling confident and educated. And so, yes, I think building that community, finding your support system is a huge part of self-care.
Yeah. And self-care, I think a lot of moms in particular, they feel a lot of guilt, around taking time for themselves. And whether that is like extending a trip or having a girls' weekend or just like going to get a pedicure, like there's a lot of guilt around that. And that's something that I've been trying to like lean into more when I have alone time to do things that make me feel good, and not feel so bad about it.
Right. No, you're so right. I work with so many moms who come to me and they say, I needed this permission. I needed to feel okay to spend time for myself, working on things, passion projects, or like you said, just going for a pedicure. It's flipping the script from, this is, I shouldn't do this and I shouldn't waste time, away from my child to, I have to do this in order to help my child, in order to see that progress. And so a lot of the work that I do with my clients is that mindset work. Like, okay, this is a necessity. We have to do this. So how can we kind of change your mindset so that you can make it a part of your routine? It's just, every day make a change every day, whether that's 5 minutes, whether that's, an hour, whatever you can get, kind of just hold space for yourself and give yourself grace. Every little bit counts and every little bit adds up.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the holding space for it and feeling guilt, it's like two different things. And it's also helpful to kind of like compartmentalize it, So I love following along on your posts and your reels about self-care because I am a huge advocate of it. And, I'm always saying like self-care isn't selfish. Like it's 100% needed. So
Yes,
yeah.
absolutely.
Well, I'm hoping now we can pivot to talking a little bit about travel and traveling with also communicating the balance of, a neurodivergent child and neurotypical. So first, I'd like to get your insight on how can parents ensure that their children both feel equally included and considered when planning a trip?
Yeah, that's a great question. I am really big on preparation. and preparing kids ahead of time, whether they're neurotypical or neurodivergent, we like to know what's going to happen. Adults too, we like to have a plan as much as possible. And so I think just being open and honest and just making that time together, planning a trip, make that fun, make that a part of, the weeks leading up to the trip. Hey guys, we're going to get together as a family. We're going to order pizza and we're going to chat about, your top 5 list of things you want to do in Disneyland. And so in that way, I think everyone really just wants to feel heard and understood and validated. And so I think giving kids that opportunity to say, hey, these are some things I'd like to do. Let's make a plan for how we can make this happen. So being prepared and then just kind of having that open and honest conversation. I think those are really important.
Yeah. And my kids are a little bit older, so it is a little bit easier to kind of like have a conversation like that, because I think their maturity level is a little bit higher, and
Right.
also really like setting the expectations. I think that
Yes.
that's important, and really being vocal about like, we have this plan, but also know that like when we're in the moment, we may need to change plans. Sometimes
Yes.
that's a little bit harder for my son. How can we also kind of support parents and giving them tips on how to communicate those messages kind of like in the moment?
Yeah. Well, I think you bring up a good point there with expectations. And that's something that I always like to tell parents is, we can have a plan. We can definitely have a plan. Like I said, that's important. But just be mindful of the fact that things might not happen the way that you were expecting, and that's okay. And
Yeah.
so I think the more, like I said, the more you prepare your child ahead of time, I really like to use visuals. There's an app called Courageous Kids. I'm not sure if Kim, you've used that before, but I really like that one. Kids, especially autistic children, really like that visual that's meaningful to them. And so I think if maybe we're just planning ahead of time, showing them like, hey, this is what it's going to look like, this is what we might do, this is what we might hear, any of that sensory experience that you can kind of bring to their attention, I think is super helpful ahead of time. In the moment, it can be difficult because, as we know, autistic children and neurodivergent children kind of struggle with changes in routine, especially if there's not that, ahead of time, knowing ahead of time. So I think just trying your best to really prepare, even over prepare if possible, and even just think of things that might go wrong. Like, hey, we might get to this ride and it might be closed. Oh no, what could we do? Well, you know what? We could go over here and do something really fun, So just kind of planning for the unexpected and just keeping your expectations kind of low while also having a plan.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that setting the bar low is important, because I think that like, I get caught up in this as being a parent. Like, I oversell it. Like, we're going to go here and it's going to be amazing. And we're going to do this, this, and this. And then you get there, things happen,
Things
and
happen.
you can't control that.
Right.
So yeah.
Absolutely. And I think that's a good learning experience for everyone, right? I get frustrated if I was planning on going to a certain restaurant and I get there and it's closed. Like, oh man, like, that could ruin your day, or it could be a really good learning opportunity. Like, hey, I could go try this new restaurant that just opened down the street. So really it's just, again, kind of going back to the self-care with
Yeah.
mindset. Okay, this wasn't what I expected, but that's okay. It doesn't have to ruin the day. There are other awesome things that we can do on our trip.
How are you working with parents now on how to provide that like effective communicating when you're outside of your home? Because a lot of it is when you're on vacation, you're parenting in a different location, but how can you, help prepare parents for, really parenting outside of the home, and when you're on a vacation, you're out of your routine. Like, what maybe are you helping parents work through now on this?
Yeah. I think it really comes back to what we've already talked about expectations and knowing that, at home, it's easier to parent at home. There's, the familiar routine, the familiar item, preferred items. So when you're out in the community or, in a completely different place, it might not go very well, at least the first time around. I think that this is a practice. The more you do it, the more you talk about trips, the more you prepare, you'll fine tune the process as you go along. And it's okay if it doesn't turn out as perfectly as you want. It's okay if things don't go the way you imagined. And so I think just really that mindset work, just preparing and understanding that it might be tough and it might not be the vacation that you were expecting. You might come back from that trip and feel exhausted and drained when you were hoping that it would be kind of relaxing and a really good time for everyone. And so I think just acknowledging that it might not go the way that you expected, and it's okay. You can try again. You could try again on the next trip. And really just like I was saying kind of too about having those preferred items. So making sure, again, it comes back to being prepared. So if you're going to go to a place, if your child has sensory aversions or if they have preferred foods that they enjoy, maybe looking at the menu at that hotel or wherever you're going to be, bringing those safe foods, bringing those safe items, really just thinking ahead and preparing ahead of time for those situations. So you're not trying to correct in the moment, because
Yeah.
it's hard. It's hard to do those things in the moment when they're already dysregulated, they're stressed. So if you can't tell, the theme is prepare as much as possible.
Yeah, I have been talking a lot about like practicing travel,
Yeah,
what that looks like. Your first trip shouldn't be like to Disneyland or Disney World. Like
right.
practice going to like a local fair or a smaller amusement park,
Absolutely.
practice like spending the night in a hotel and, kind of preparing your kids for the sounds you may hear or the smells or, everything related to like the sensory, things that could come up. So the elements there. But yes, definitely common theme, prepare.
Prepare.
Yes.
Over prepare more than you think.
Yeah.
Almost to the point where you're bored of going through like, hey, this is what we're gonna do. This is,
Yeah.
it's good to be prepared as much as possible, because like we said, things will go wrong and
Yeah.
it's okay.
So what are some tools that you can give parents so they feel like they're providing support to both kids while you're on this trip? I'm often traveling alone with my kids, so we are setting a lot of expectations. We're making sure that everyone is feeling heard. But, I think that what we talked about in the beginning of this call is I really want to make sure my daughter has a fun experience on a trip. I know I'm giving more, support to my son in some areas where he needs it, but I also want my daughter to feel really included. So I think in just outside of travel and everyday life, like how are you working with parents to make sure that they're supporting both kids?
Yeah, that's such a good question. I think, again, it comes back to that open conversation. I don't know about you, and I know you said your kids are a little bit older. I feel like the neurotypical siblings of neurodivergent kids can be some of the best models and teachers to people in the community, other kids at school. They are so loyal to their siblings, and I think that we can use those strengths. I'm a very strengths-based speech therapist, and so I think using the other sibling, using that neurotypical sibling's strengths, their love, their care, their wanting to teach other people about their sibling. And so I think, giving them that platform, telling them they have that role, like, hey, you can help your brother or sister to have this great time on this trip. Here are some things that we need to do. I would love to do the things that you need to do, you want to do too, but with the understanding that your brother or sister might need a little more time. They might need a break during the day. I mean, I went to Disneyland with my fiance's family back in, it was in March, and we were there from open to close. And I, as an adult, I was exhausted and overstimulated. So I think that that's something to consider too, is like, okay, we're going to go from this time to this time, and here's where we can kind of put a break in. Like, hey, we're going to take a breather. So, with the sibling, we could go to lunch. We could, just sit down and chat about what we've done so far, talk about, your top 3 things that you've done over the trip. Just making it a really positive experience for everyone, I think is the goal. And then also, I know you mentioned that you travel a lot by yourself. So that's a barrier. So I would say, if there are other adults on the trip, maybe making a plan where, the other sibling could go to another park for a little bit and then come back and meet for lunch, just kind of being flexible as much as possible, with that support that you have. I think that could be a really good option as well.
Yeah. When we do travel with extended family, I'm always tapping on them
Yep.
because Sometimes my son just needs some like regulating time in the room, just on his iPad or talking to his best friend. Like that's what he likes. And then he's recharged to go back to like watch fireworks and all of that. And it
Right.
also gives me time to have one on one with my daughter and do the things that my son doesn't like to do.
Yes.
And, and also like the stamina there for shopping. He's not into it.
Right.
But my daughter wants to look at all the souvenirs and she wants to look at everything. And so I think that's an important tip when you are traveling, to tap on those extended family members and ask for help, and also ask for like kind of the one-on-one time, so you can feel connected.
Definitely.
So, yeah. One of the other things I want to talk about on this topic is how during a trip can parents, specifically moms, it's a little bit different when you're alone, but like when you are with extended family, how can you recharge also? And what kind of support can we give moms to just be like, I need to raise my hand and I need a coffee break alone?
Yeah. I think it goes back to giving you the permission to do that. Yes, ask for help. You are so able to do that, and I think it's easier said than done. A lot of the times, we don't always want to ask for help, but
Oh,
in this
yeah.
situation, sometimes you need to. You need to ask for help and you need to ask for that support. I think kind of going along the lines of, you mentioned grandparents and kind of extended family, that I think can be a conversation that is a little bit difficult at times, especially when you're navigating kind of different generations and different parenting styles. And so, again, going back to preparation, I think that that's a conversation that you could have in the weeks or months leading up to the trip. Like, hey, this is how we handle these situations. This is what my child needs to be successful. And kind of asking them if they have any questions about it. Or, I mean, usually they're very supportive and they just want to know why you're doing certain things, why you aren't disciplining in the way that they're used to
Yeah.
disciplining. And so I think, again, going back to the conversation of just being open and honest, and people like to feel included and validated, and they really do want to help. And so I think if you just come at it from that perspective, giving them the information that they need, everyone wants to pitch in and help. And so I think that that's really important as well.
Yeah, one of the things that I had on my list to talk to you about is about bringing grandparents and extended family and how you can include them. And I love what you already said. Like when you're planning, bring them in early also. You know,
Absolutely.
because I think there's like you're saying, generational, and I think there's like an expectation gap of the way that grandma would do things versus the way that like moms or dads would do things.
Right.
I think when it comes to expectations is there are certain things on vacation that maybe you need to let go. Like
Yeah.
grandma's going to buy an extra cotton candy and you got to just go with it.
Okay. Yes. Exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, Claire, I really appreciate your time. I'd love to get any final thoughts, anything that you would like to share with parents that are maybe planning a trip, that they're maybe feeling a little hesitant on bringing both of their kids or their whole family, like any final thoughts or any, words of encouragement.
Absolutely. I think traveling is such an important experience for kids and families to have together. So, my first piece of advice would be do it. Do it scared and know that it's going to be messy the first time around, and that's okay. Like I said, you'll get the flow. You'll kind of self-reflect and say, "Hey, this didn't go so well. I wonder how we can make it better the next time." And really just using those opportunities to teach and use it as a learning opportunity for your kids, for your neurotypical kids, your neurodivergent kids. Everyone's learning, and everyone's learning about themselves too. Even as adults, I'm still learning, what I need in the moment. I'm still learning how my brain works, and it's different every day, right? So I think just being open and just realizing that those experiences together are so important and so valuable, and you'll look back years from now and be so grateful that you did it and you chose to kind of invest in those moments and learn from them. And I have so much respect for all of the parents that I work with, because you guys are just doing hard work and it pays off. So that would be my best advice.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. I mean, travel, I think it's just so important. You're introducing a whole new world to your child,
Yes.
and whether they're on the spectrum or not, it's such an important activity, that an event that you can share with your kids from like a learning experience and also from like a memory standpoint. So
Yes.
yes. So Claire, thank you so much. Where can people find you? How can they work with you?
Yeah, so I am very active on Instagram. So my handle is at authentically you speech. Feel free to message me. I love hearing from all different kinds of parents. I connect with parents from all over the world as well, which is why I'm so fired up about what I do because it just allows me to connect with so many different people. And it's like we talked about at the beginning, the community. So I'd love for you to join the community on there. You can get my free training on self care for autism moms. It's the link in my profile. But I'd love to connect with you there. That's my best place.
Great. Claire, thank you so much. I appreciate all of your insight and the time today.
Absolutely. Thank you, Kim. That was so much fun.